Okay, hello students. So this is going to be the read aloud for the week. I'm reading you the story that you are going to be doing some assignments based off of. So I'm going to read this aloud to you. There's a copy of it that you can follow along with if you would like. All I ask is that you just really listen to this story and do your best to understand it and just listen very carefully, okay? So this story takes place in 2155. So right now we're in 2020, so it's over 100 years ahead of where we are now. This story was written in the 1950s, so when the author wrote this story took place 200 years ahead of when he wrote it. So that's just something to keep in mind. All right, the story is called The Fun They Had by Isaac Asimov. Margie even wrote about it that night in her diary. On the page headed May 17th, 2155, she wrote, "Today, Tommy found a real book." It was a very old book. Margie's grandfather once said that when he was a little boy, his grandfather told him that there was a time when all stories were printed on paper. They turned the pages, which were yellow and crinkly, and it was awfully funny to read words that stood still instead of moving the way they were supposed to, on a screen, you know. And then, when they turned back the page before, it had the same words on it that it had had when they read it the first time. "Gee," said Tommy, "what a waste. When you're through with the book, you just throw it away, I guess. Our television screen must have had 1,000,000 books on it, and it's good for plenty more. I wouldn't throw it away." So far that we know that instead of reading books, they read things on a screen. "Same with mine," said Margie. She was 11 and hadn't seen as many telebooks as Tommy had. He was 13. She said, "Where did you find it?" "In my house." He pointed without looking because he was busy reading in the attic. "What's it about?" "School." Margie was scornful. "School? What's there to write about school? I hate school." Margie had always hated school, but now she hated it more than ever. The mechanical teacher had been giving her test after test in geography, and she had been doing worse and worse until her mother had shaken her head sorrowfully and sent for the county inspector. He was a round little man with a red face and a whole box of tools with dials and wires. He smiled at her and gave her an apple, and then took the teacher apart. So now we also know that they don't have real people for teachers, they have robots. Margie had hoped he wouldn't know how to put it together again, but he knew it all right, and after an hour or so, there it was again, large and black and ugly with a big screen on which all the lessons were shown and the questions were asked. That wasn't so bad. The part she hated the most was the slot where she had to put homework and test papers. She always had to write them out in a punch code they made her learn when she was 6 years old, and the mechanical teacher calculated the mark in no time. The inspector had smiled after he was finished and patted her head. He said to her mother, "It's not the little girl's fault, Mrs. Jones. I think the geography sector was geared a little too quick. Those things happen sometimes. I've slowed it up to an average 10-year level. Actually, the overall pattern of her progress is quite satisfactory," and he patted Margie's head again. Margie was disappointed. She had been hoping they would take the teacher away altogether. They had once taken Tommy's teacher away for nearly a month because the history sector had blanked out completely. So she said to Tommy, "Why would anyone write about school?" Tommy looked at her with superior eyes. "Because it's not our kind of school, stupid. This is the old kind of school that they had hundreds and hundreds of years ago." Margie was hurt. "Well, I don't know what kind of school they had all that time ago." She read the book over his shoulder for a while, and then said, "Anyway, they had a teacher." "Sure they had a teacher, but it wasn't a regular teacher. It was a man." "A man? How could a man be a teacher?" So she's confused because they're used to having robots as teachers, and in their world, robots are much smarter than real people. So she's wondering, how could a human be smart enough to be a teacher? "Well, he just told the boys and girls things and gave them homework and asked them questions." "A man isn't smart enough." "Sure he is. My father knows as much as my teacher." He can't. A man can't know as much as a teacher. He knows almost as much, I betcha. Margie wasn't prepared to dispute that. She said, I wouldn't want a strange man in my house to teach me. Tommy screamed with laughter. You don't know much, Margie. The teachers didn't live in the house. They had a special building, and all the kids went there. And all the kids learned the same thing? Sure, if they were the same age. But my mother says a teacher has to be adjusted to fit the mind of each boy and girl it teaches, and that the kid has to be taught differently. Just the same, they didn't do it that way then. If you don't like it, you don't have to read the book. I didn't say I didn't like it, Margie said quickly. She wanted to read about those funny schools. They weren't nearly half finished when Margie's mother called, Margie, school! Margie looked up. Not yet, Mama. Now, said Mrs. Jones, and it's probably time for Tommy, too. Margie said to Tommy, Can I read the book some more with you after school? Maybe, he said nonchalantly. He walked away, whistling, the dusty old book tucked beneath his arm. Margie went to the schoolroom. It was right next to her bedroom, and the mechanical teacher was on and waiting for her. It was always on at the same time every day except for Saturday and Sunday, because her mother said that little girls learned better if they learned at regular hours. So remember that this story was written in the 1950s, and the way women were thought of back then was a lot different than today. And obviously we know now that boys and girls can all learn the same. Everybody learns at different paces. It doesn't have anything to do with if you're a boy or a girl. The screen was lit up and it said, Today's arithmetical lesson is on the addition of proper fractions. Please insert yesterday's homework in the proper slot. Margie did so with a sigh. She was thinking about the old schools they had when her grandfather's grandfather was a boy. All the kids from the whole neighborhood came, laughing and shouting at the schoolyard, sitting together in the schoolroom, going home together at the end of the day. They learned the same thing so they could help one another on the homework and talk about it. And the teachers were people. The mechanical teacher was flashing on the screen. When we add the fractions, 1/2 and 1/4, blah, blah, blah. Margie was thinking about how the kids must have loved it in the old days. She was thinking about the fun they had. So that's the story. So I just felt that this story you all can really relate to because we're not going to real school right now. You guys are learning from home just like Margie and Tommy do on your computers just like they do. Of course, it's a little bit different than their situation, but you guys know what it's like to go to real school. So I just thought this was a very interesting story, and I hope you guys liked it. And I hope you guys have a great week. And yeah, see ya.